Welcome back to my channel. My name is Tim Childers and I am an amateur photographer. And if this is your first time here, this channel is all about helping amateur photographers. If you're a professional photographer, we certainly welcome you and we hope that you will provide us with some comments to help us out as we go along. But basically this channel is looking at ways to use less than the most expensive equipment to make the best photos we can make, and to look at the ways that we have succeeded and the things that we failed at and how we can change that and improve and work out over time. So this is sort of a stream of consciousness channel of how I am trying to go through improving my photography. All right, with that said, let's get started. One of the things that I wanted to talk about early on was why I struggle with getting sharp images. I have always struggled with getting sharp images. There are two main categories of reasons of why I have difficulties getting sharp images. Now sometimes I rock it. They're all sharp, everything's great. And other times I get home and out of 100 pictures I've taken, I've got 8 that might be usable. So a couple of things, and one is there are technical reasons why my pictures are not sharp. And then the other category is there are personal reasons, reasons why they're not sharp. So this video is sort of part A. We're going to look at some technical things about what I have struggled with over the years as I've tried to sort of hobby around with photography. And then in the part B, the next video that we'll do will be the things that I know I'm doing personally that I have to improve. And like anything that you do, playing the piano, playing guitar, painting pictures, you have to continually practice and rehearse to get any better. And it's one of the reasons why sometimes I think that as amateur photographers we struggle, is because the vast majority of our time is spent doing other things. So today we want to talk about the technical things. So photography itself is basically just how you're using light. That's really all it is. The sensor inside your camera is picking up the light and it's giving you an image based on the range, the dynamic range from very white whites to very black blacks and everything in between. Every color that you have in a color image is made up of a spectrum that includes all of these things that go to white, that go to black. So in that, there is this triangle that we talk about. 3 things that we have to be concerned about when we take a picture. One is aperture, we talked about last week, or in the last video. Another one is your shutter speed, and the last one is ISO. And each of those impacts the way light comes into your camera differently. So, you know, it's one of the reasons why a lot of people never get off of auto or off of program in their camera, because your camera is a really, really smart computer. And if you tell it that you're going to shoot at ISO 100 and you're in auto, your camera, when you focus, your camera is going to decide, I need this much ISO and I need this fast of a shutter speed. Boom, it's going to do it. What that does is that takes away the personal choices that you can make about other things you'd like to do in your image. And so it's always important to sort of go to manual mode and play around there until you get comfortable with these 3 things of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. So we talked about aperture last week. And we're dealing with what these 3 things do with light, because the sensor has to have so much light in order to take a sharp picture. So if you make your aperture wider, the number is smaller. If you're going from f11 to f8 to f5.6 to f1.8, the wider the aperture, the larger the aperture, the more light you're taking in. And so the more light you're taking in, there are 2 things that you can do to make sure that your picture is not overexposed. One is you can take a faster shutter speed, because the faster your shutter opens and closes, the less light it lets in. Or you can lower your ISO. So on my Canon 70D, the lowest ISO I have is 100. And if I'm shooting at 100 and I've set my aperture at 5.6 and my image is overexposed, the only option I have, I mean, if f.6 is giving me the depth of field I want, the only option I have is to increase my shutter speed to let less light come in. Alternatively, if I close the aperture and I go to f11 or f18 or f22, and then I'm letting in less and less light, my picture could be underexposed. And so to compensate for that, I could slow down the shutter speed. That means if I'm handheld, it means that I might get camera shake and my images won't be sharp. Or I can increase the ISO, but I can only increase it so far before I start to get noise, in an older camera at least. And so I have found that about 800 ISO is as far as I can go before I start degrading my images and losing my sharpness. So that's aperture. The other one is shutter speed. So they say, whoever they are, that typically about 1/60th of a second is the slowest shutter speed that you can use handheld. If I'm going to slow my shutter speed down, I'm letting in more light. And if I'm letting in more light and my image is overexposed, then I have a couple of choices. I can lower the ISO, or I can close down the aperture to let in less light. And again, if f5.6 is what I want, I'm taking a picture of a person, f5.6 is a good place to be for that, in my experience at least, to get sharp pictures. Then if I can't increase the ISO and I can't get the light right, then I've got a problem with shutter speed. And so if I go really fast, a 1/250th of a second or 1/1000th of a second, I'm really freezing the action. So if I'm going to be taking a picture of somebody riding a bicycle down the street, for instance, I might need 1/1000th of a second to capture that picture so fast that their own movement doesn't blur me. And if I have to go to 1/1000th of a second, then I've got to worry about what aperture do I need to be at to get enough light in during that split time, or what ISO do I need. By the same token, if I'm taking a picture of a waterfall and I want to get that smooth, milky look to the water, I might be talking about a half a second or even up to 2 seconds. So I'm going to use a tripod to get the lens to open and stay open, the shutter to open long enough so that it sort of blends all that movement together. But if I do that, then I've got to be concerned about aperture. I've got to be concerned about ISO as well. The third way to look at how to get light into your camera, obviously, is ISO. Now, ISO is basically the electronic way to get light onto your sensor. The sensor is that part of the computer inside your camera that judges how much light it's going to accept. And so at 100 on my Canon 70D, 100 is as dark as I can go, the least amount of light that I can put on it. And that's typically where I want to be, 100 to 200. If I've got a newer camera, or maybe a full frame camera, or another model of a camera like a Nikon or a Sony, my ISO might go down to 50 or even, I think I've seen 35. But let's just talk about 100. So if I'm at 100 and my picture is too dark, I can increase the ISO at least some on my Canon 70D before I start to degrade the quality of the picture. So if I hit my limit, if I'm at 800 and I know that I can't go beyond 800 and I'm still too dark, then I've either got to open my shutter speed longer, or I've got to open the aperture wider. So those three things all work together to do two things for you. They control the light and they control the sharpness of your image. This is why getting out of auto, for a lot of people using their cameras, getting out of auto is a scary thing. because to say go to manual mode and start practicing, they're going to take a lot of pictures that are totally, absolutely useless. They're too dark, they're too bright, they're too blurry, they're too whatever. But that's okay. It's a DSLR. You're not wasting any money taking 1,000 pictures where you delete 999 of them. It is the practice, it's the tutorial, it's the continually going through the process. So those technical things come with practice, they come with trial and error, but those are the three things to really look at. My suggestion is to get your camera out and put it in manual mode, put it at f8, put it at ISO 100, and put a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second. Doesn't matter if you're inside or outside, wherever you are. Find something, if you're standing in your living room or sitting on your couch, find something there to take a picture of. And start to take pictures in manual mode, and then start to make adjustments, one adjustment at a time. Adjust the aperture first. See what that does. Then go back to f8. Adjust the shutter speed. See what that does. And then go back to 1/60th of a second. And then adjust your ISO. Go as high as your ISO will go and see what that does. And then put it back. And then start to see how you can manipulate those three at one time to get what you want. If you need more light or less light, faster image to freeze the action, or a slower image to let some sort of movement get captured, totally up to you. That's the thing that I've had to sort of deal with and learn about with the technical side of how to get sharper images. In the next video, a couple of weeks from now, because I do this once every 2 weeks, we'll look at the personal side. What I'm doing personally, mistakes I'm making over and over and over that I really need to work on to take my images to another level, to take the consistency of my images to another level. So I hope you'll come back then. In the meantime, please subscribe to my channel. If you like what's going on here, please share it out, let other people know that it's here, and make sure that you click that like button if you liked it, and leave me a comment. The comments are, right now I'm getting comments on Facebook, and I'm getting comments on Twitter, and I'm getting private comments places. Not getting a lot of comments in YouTube, and that's fine, but the comments in YouTube create a discussion around this video, and I would love to have your thoughts posted here. So until next time, enjoy some coffee, take it easy, practice with your camera.